everybody. Welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, with your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles. And you know what we prefer here. We choose truth over narrative and principles over politics. And I've got another episode for you today, and you already know what I'm going to talk about. I got to talk about that abysmal, egregious, trashy-ass speech that President Joe Biden gave last Thursday. And I'm sure you've already heard all about it. You've seen all the reactions. But, I mean, the fallout is still continuing even until into this week. So it's not a stale topic, and it is important for what we're dealing with right now, but also even down the road and how it could affect American politics, how it can affect political discourse. I mean, there are some things that Biden did that were unprecedented and way beyond the pale. So we have to keep talking about this because we don't want to see this type of behavior from an American president. And I'm already hearing the left right now, oh, well, what about Trump? Well, I'll talk about Trump too, all right? But right now, it's Biden. Biden is the one who made the splash. So we got to talk about the guy. Before I get into everything, you know what to do. I need you to like this, share this. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. That helps me out immensely. You'll be notified whenever I upload a new episode. Also, if you're listening to, well, you are going to be listening to this on a podcast app. So please give me a review. Give me a 5-star rating, especially if you're using Apple Podcasts. Give me just a few sentences telling people why you like this podcast. Only takes a second. Give me a 5-star review. That's going to help me out with these here algorithms. So without further ado, let's just kind of get into this. Now, most people have probably, well, I don't know if most people watched it, but most people know what happened, right? I mean, President Joe Biden got up there and he was in front of a backdrop that is reminiscent of something that you see in hell or maybe in like some dystopian movie. And in front of this backdrop with two U.S. Marines flanking him, which he got a lot of criticism about, even from the left, he gave this speech where he suggested that essentially half of the country's rank and file people are extremists because they hold certain views that he doesn't like. Now, we're used to this type of demonization, right? I mean, the left has been doing this for decades. I mean, since way before Trump. But it has never been a sitting American president doing something like this. That's why this is unprecedented. And people try to clean it up afterwards, and I'm going to get to that, but it's absurd. Like, the man said what he said, and you know what he meant. And just to remind you, this speech came only like a day or two after he referred to, quote, MAGA Republicans as semi-fascists. And White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre affirmed this. She doubled down on it. So this was not a gaffe. And this was not him speaking off the cuff. This speech, it took work. People put this together. They thought this through. So this isn't him just speaking off the cuff and making a gaffe, kind of like Hillary Clinton did when she made her deplorables comment. Well, this is far worse because they actually put thought into the words that he used when he gave this speech. And to me, I don't see how anybody can defend this. I mean, it is far beyond anything that Trump did. And let's be real, guys. I mean, we know Trump was incendiary. We know he used harsh rhetoric. He says things that he shouldn't say. But as far as I can recall, he has never gotten up at a podium and demonized people who didn't vote for him. Demonized half the country. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to play a short clip from Biden's speech. I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously, but I'm going to take some of his quotes, but I just want you guys to see this clip here just to get a better idea of what happened during the speech. Let's take a look.
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
Okay, I may have had the wrong clip there, but it's close, right? I mean, it's not that different, is it? I mean, this is what that whole backdrop looked like. That's how the speech came off. And again, this is not something that we should take lightly because This is the type of rhetoric that can tear a nation apart. And we're already divided enough. And Biden positioned himself when he was running as a unifier. He said he would promote unity and he would unify the country, even people who disagree with him. Well, it looks like that's gone out the window, right? So at the beginning of his speech, Darth Brandon claimed, quote, equality and democracy are under assault. Now, I could go into how we're not a democracy, but fine. I mean, we're a republic that has democratic elements, whatever. But we all know that. But then later is when he went all in. And he said, quote, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there is no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans, and that is a threat to this country. He then said, quote, MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. And then he dialed it up to 11 again. He said that conservatives are promoting authoritarian leaders with no sense of irony at all. He said, quote, they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. Now, I'm going to address that real quick. You can't call somebody authoritarian if you're pressuring social media companies to suppress content that you don't agree with. You can't call somebody else an authoritarian when you're trying to disarm as much of the public as you can. You are the authoritarian in that scenario, especially when it comes to free speech. And this administration has been horrible when it comes to free speech. You can't call somebody an authoritarian when you want to get people fired from their jobs for not taking a vaccine or taking a booster. You can't do it. So, to me, it's like that old Joseph Goebbels saying, always accuse your enemy of that which you are doing, right? You talk about violence. Okay, let's go there. January 6th. That was horrible. It sucked. Shouldn't have happened. The people who actually engaged in violence on that day should be in jail. Not the people who just wandered in, took selfies or whatever, maybe trespassing, something like that. They don't need to be thrown in a cage. If you attacked a police officer, if you broke stuff up, then you deserve some type of punishment. But if we were to look back over the past few years, who has been responsible for most of the political violence? Yeah, we know who that is. We know what happened after the murder of George Floyd and how progressives like Black Lives Matter and others exploited his murder to foment violence all across the country, to push the defund the police movement. 25 people died, most of them black, in that year of violence. A little over a year, I believe. Now, did you see them condemning it? Yeah, you saw a few Democrats condemning it. You also saw a lot of them bailing people out for rioting, tacitly supporting it, making excuses for it. That hasn't happened with January 6th. I mean, yeah, there are a few people on the right who tried to justify that, but the vast majority of conservatives, whether they're MAGA Republicans or not, condemned the violence. So the Democrats don't have any room to stand on when it comes to this issue. But here's the thing. Here's the other thing. People are trying to say that Biden was only referring to fringe elements on the right. He was supposedly talking about using MAGA Republicans to describe a certain segment of Republicans who have these weird and extreme points of view. Here's the thing. That's BS. That's BS. First off, and I'm going to get to this in another segment, these people aren't defining the word MAGA Republican right. And at first I gave them the benefit of the doubt, maybe because I know that a lot of progressives and Democrat types don't really understand people on the right because they don't bother to talk to us because we're filth to them and we're beneath them. But as a result, they don't really, it's why they usually don't know what they're talking about when they're arguing against our positions. Half the time they don't even know what they are. But in this situation, I do believe this was deliberately deceptive to define a MAGA Republican in this way. But here's the thing. They still messed up. It's still obvious that he was talking about everybody who didn't vote for him. He mentioned the right to choose. Now, that's abortion, right? So if you're pro-life, you are automatically a MAGA Republican, whether you identify as that or not. See what I'm saying here? See what's going on here? These aren't, I mean, I had people on Twitter trying to tell me, oh no, he's just talking about people who deny the results of the election. Well, you know what? Various polls show that between 40, 70, and 70% of Republicans have doubts about the 2020 election. That's just the way it is. So if you're using that to define it, yeah, then you are talking about the vast majority of Republicans and conservatives. So you can't say that he was trying to separate mainstream. First off, he doesn't even know what mainstream Republicans are. If he thinks that Mitch McConnell, and Mitt Romney are mainstream, he's tripping. These are people who are part of the establishment, yes, but they're no longer mainstream. Donald Trump saw to that, right? So don't believe people who say that Biden was trying to approach this in an intellectually honest way in which he differentiates between the extremists and the people who, he would prefer to deal with, right? No, he's talking about voters who voted Trump because there's a lot of overlap there. Now, there are differences between what a MAGA Republican really is and what a maybe, I don't know, non-MAGA Republican. Like, I don't identify as MAGA. I'm not a MAGA Republican, but I am non-establishment, so I'm not part of the establishment. But I have a lot of areas of commonality when it comes to policy, when it comes to principles, when it comes to values. But to him, he wants to lump all of us together. So that's just the abortion example is just one example of where somebody like myself would be in commonality with somebody identifying as MAGA or America First. That's another term that you hear. So the next day, Biden tried to walk some of that back because either he forgot what he said the night before, which is very likely, or because of the backlash. He had an exchange with Peter Doocy from Fox News, and he tried to pretend that he didn't just call half of the nation a threat to the republic, extremists. He said, quote, "I don't consider any Trump supporter a threat to the country." That's a lie. That's a lie. You just said that the night before. And again, I would be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if he had just said that during a conversation or off mic or it wasn't a prepared speech. This was a prepared speech. He read it. He knew what was in it. He didn't take any of it out. His team wrote that specifically so he can make that point. And again, he had just gotten done calling Trump supporters semi-fascists, and his White House press secretary doubled down on that. So this is the messaging that the White House has deliberately crafted. This isn't a mistake. This isn't a gaffe. He said what he said, and he meant it. Now, just get the obvious out of the way. What would have happened if Donald Trump dared to pull a stunt like that? I mean, I don't normally go to the, what if Trump did it, but in this case, it's apt. It makes sense. We already know what would happen if Trump even said anything close to that. I mean, Trump could sneeze wrong, and they would have a full-on meltdown. You'd have all this wailing and gnashing of teeth coming from Democrats and members of the activist media. But nope, they wouldn't be defending him. And here's the thing. Some are trying to defend him, but there are some major figures on the left who are actually criticizing him, and I'll get to that later in this episode. But like I said, the bottom line is Biden said what he said, and he meant every single word, comma, period, and exclamation mark. And I do believe that this is the messaging strategy that we can expect from the White House, but not only the White House, but from Democrats. They're already doing it. Charlie Crist said, "I don't want DeSantis voters." New York Governor Kathy Hochul said, or she implied, that Republicans who don't agree with her should move to Florida. They, for whatever reason, they seem to think that this is a winning strategy. But there's something else that I want to bring up here, because people were characterizing this speech as dark and angry, which is true. I saw something else, though. What I'm seeing with this rhetoric coming from Biden, from the White House, from Democratic politicians, this is fear, guys. This is fear. This rhetoric is coming from fear. Not fear that the Republic is under assault. No, because they're the ones assaulting it. They're not afraid of Trump destroying the Republic. They're afraid of losing power. They're terrified about what's about to happen in November. and even in 2024. I mean, they know what's going to happen in November. They know how horrible Biden's approval ratings are. They know how badly people view Democrats right now. Republicans were way ahead in polling. The only thing that helped to close that gap a little bit was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But still, they're not. I mean, they're not set to win the House. I mean, history is against Democrats, and their performance is also against them. They have mishandled every problem with which they've been presented, and they've created a slew of new problems. You know, I was doing a little debate on Sky News Arabia the other day, and it was me and a Democratic strategist, and all throughout that conversation, and I'll post the link on Twitter. It was very interesting, but all throughout that conversation, he kept doubling down on January 6th. And I didn't say anything about it at first because I knew why he was doing it. I let him do it a few times. You know, we were going back and forth about Biden's speech, about Trump's speech that he gave the night after, or 2 nights after. And finally, I just said, you know what? I can see why my colleague here keeps bringing up January 6th, and why Democrats keep bringing it up. It's because they have nothing to run on. They have nothing to run on. Even though they know that most of Americans are past January 6th, they have to throw something at the wall. I mean, now they have the FBI raid, so they're trying to harp on that, but we don't have the information as to what's going on with that yet, so they can't, it's not very easy to use it, so they have to double down on January 6th. Here's the thing. Ain't nobody thinking about January 6th anymore. When you go to get gas and you're paying way more than you did in prior years, you're not thinking about January 6th. When you go to your grocery store to get groceries and you're paying exorbitant prices for your crudités, like Dr. Oz says, you ain't thinking about January 6th. Now, I'm not saying people don't think it's a bad thing, but if you look at polling, and when it comes to voter priorities, January 6th doesn't even make the top 10. Abortion is kind of up there, but even abortion is in the top 5. People are concerned about the economy. They're concerned about jobs. They're concerned about inflation. They're concerned about education, healthcare, crime. Ain't nobody thinking about January 6th. I'm sorry. It's just not a thing. And Democrats are really trying to use that to distract from the fact that they have nothing to run on. They created this inflation crisis. They created the migrant crisis. They're pushing this transing of kids and far leftist ideology on race and sexuality in schools. They're the ones doing that. They're the ones who supported the defund the police movement and support soft on crime policies. That's what people are worried about. So this isn't going to work the way they want it to. But I get why they're doing it. They see the writing on the wall and they have to try something. But we'll just leave it right there for a second. After this, I want to talk about something else, especially when it concerns MAGA Republicans. I actually want to define what that is and give the real definition as opposed to Biden's, deceptive one that he made up. But hang in there. I'll see you on the other side.